Jane Austen once said, "When I have a house of my own, I shall be miserable if I have not an excellent library." She's absolutely right. You need books in your life. You need to read. You need to enjoy looking at books, reading books. Doesn't matter what kind of book that is. If it's a long book you're reading, that is great. If it's a picture book, that's great. If it's a comic book, that's wonderful. It does not matter what it is. Just read books and enjoy books. The imagination is very important, and we need to be able to escape and read books. Today on My Favorite Stuff, we are going to look at books. So let's get started. I do have a mixture of books. Some of my favorite stuff I have. This is not all of my books, mind you. I have a lot of books, but this is just a handful of some random books, some unique books and stuff that you might want to see. So I did bring out a few things. Let's get started. I want to start with a classic, The Art of War. Now, The Art of War was written by Sun Tzu. He was a general from the 15th century BC. This book, for the most part, is certainly nothing unique, nothing rare. You could buy this book pretty much anywhere, and this one actually specifically is a special edition that has other things in it. And for the most part, The Art of War is about it's an ancient Chinese military strategic writings, I guess is a way of putting it. It's a poetic journey, very documentary. However, it's educational, and the way it's written is extremely poetic. So this continues to be on many people's list of some of the greatest writings ever. And I highly suggest, if you have a minute, it is a very short reading, and it's not very long at all. You can get through this pretty quick, and plenty of movies written based off of this type of writing, and plenty of quotes and everything else that have revolved around this. So I do suggest reading it. It's very interesting and enjoyable. Art of War, ladies and gentlemen. Another great book, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's The Lost World. Certainly one of my most favorite books that I've ever read. It is imaginative, and it involves dinosaurs and creatures and cavemen and primate people and all kinds of cool stuff. And I highly suggest reading this. This is the Triangle Books edition from, this is originally from 1912. This book was the Triangle Books edition from 1943. Certainly not in the best of shape, but it's a great read. You can see it's very easy to read, and it pretty much follows a handful of scientists and explorers who went to the Amazon to explore a plateau that has never been explored. They find dinosaurs and other cool stuff. So again, highly suggest reading the book. Very easy read, but it is very imaginative. And if you have anybody in your life who enjoys dinosaurs, this is a wonderful read for them. So highly suggested. Let's not forget about the overall, one of the greatest books ever written, probably, is The Shining. Obviously, Stephen King's The Shining. This is a book club edition. I don't exactly remember which edition this is. It's the book club edition. It's got a gutter code on it of V39, I believe. V39. And if you're ever curious what the gutter code is, that allows readers to understand which edition they have if it's a little confusing. So this, of course, if you're familiar with The Shining, I don't really need to go into detail, but this is a wonderful book. This is certainly a great book for reading. It will keep you up at night, and you will certainly finish it because it's a great read. The Shining. Let's talk a little bit about Dante. So, Dante, I'm going to mess up his name. Allegheny? Your guess is as good as mine. He was an Italian. This is an Italian narrative poem, if you will, from between 1308 and 1320. It was finished in 1320 by Dante, but Dante, this is the Divine Comedy. And, oh yeah, there you go. So Dante wrote this book, this very poetic narrative about pretty much the afterlife. Once you die, this is your journey to God, or to hell, depending on, I guess, which direction you're heading. And as you can see, it's got wonderful illustrations. And this book in general was a translation by Lawrence White. And as you can see, it's a larger book. It's easy to hold on to. It's easy to read. This is 1948 from Pantheon Books. And it's in wonderful condition, and it is a very interesting read. If you have a minute to sit down and read Dante's Inferno, or the Divine Comedy. It does have 3 chapters, Inferno, Purgatorio, and Paradiso. And again, talking about your journey towards God. Again, very poetic and wonderful read. And this in itself is a very wonderful book. I love the word Dante in the front there, engraved. But wonderful book, very fun read. What's interesting about this book is he actually finished it. So Dante finished this book in 1320. It took him like 12 years to finish. When he finished it, he died. He died in 1321, and he finished it in 1320. So again, it is a little ironic, certainly, that he wrote this before his demise, but nonetheless, wonderful book, highly suggested. This is kind of an interesting book. Now, this is, of course, just a reprint. You can buy this book on Amazon, but this is the Voynich manuscript. It is highly unknown. People still really don't know much about it. Now, this book is very strange because it's pretty much just photographs, high-quality photographs of the actual book. And because the actual book is in the museum, I'm not sure which museum, but in a museum. And as you can see, it's pretty much photographed, scanned, and then put into this book. So the Voynich manuscript is carbon dated to the early 15th century, so the 1400s, give or take. And they're assuming it's Italian. It is done in an unknown written system, so we don't know anything about it. Has yet to be decoded. Nobody knows how to read it. But as you can see, it's got pretty unique writings, but it is certainly written by somebody. It's very well done. It's got a lot of imagery of plants and biology, paleobotany, a lot of sexual imagery, growth. So it's hard to say exactly what this is, and nobody still really knows to this day what it is and what the purpose of it was and why it's written and how it's written. And so it's very unique. It's got a lot of, again, kind of sexual imagery, but still a lot of plants and paleobotany type imagery. Yeah, hard to say, but it's very interesting. It's fun to zip through and kind of try and decode on your own. But this is just a soft cover version of it that allows you to at least zip through it and read it and enjoy it and try and decode some of it on your own. But nonetheless, very cool. I highly suggest zipping through it. Even if you don't own the book, watch some documentaries on it because it is pretty interesting. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about biographies. Biographies, I think, are really important because it allows us to follow somebody else's life. And some people have really interesting lives, and it's neat to be able to read somebody's account, somebody's biography, memoirs, if you will. And there's a few that I would suggest. One of my favorites is Through a Window by Jane Goodall. And Jane Goodall, if you obviously most people are familiar with her. Jane Goodall was born in 1934, and she's still alive doing her thing. And at the age of 26, she followed her passion of wildlife and Africa, and she began to study chimpanzees and went to Africa and did her thing. So this is Through a Window, My 30 Years with the Chimpanzees of Gombe. And this one is signed. So I'm very happy to have this. This is certainly in my collection that I love, and this book is very good. It breaks down some of her interactions with chimpanzees and her life in Africa. And it's got some imagery and all kinds of stuff. This is a great book. This really is wonderful. And actually, most of her books are good, not just this one. This just happens to be the one that I have. But it's a great book. Follow Jane Goodall. She's got some great stuff. And another book, which is very similar, I think, to Jane Goodall, is Tippi Hedren. This is her memoir, and this is a signed copy from Tippi. If you're familiar with Tippi Hedren, she was the primary actress, primary character in the movie Birds by Alfred Hitchcock. This book does break down her relationship with Hitchcock and how some of her interactions with him may not have been so great. But Tippi was a kind of a forefront for animal conservation as well. She was born in 1930. She is still alive. There is some confusion on that. A lot of people think she to die, but she's not. She's very much alive. She's in her 90s. And she was kind of an animal rights activist before. So she was a fashion model, then an actress, and now for the most part just works primarily with animals. She had a love for lions and tigers, and big cats. So she actually founded the Roar Foundation in 1983. And that's what this book kind of goes over, is her love for wildlife and animals and big cats and that kind of stuff as well. So she also is a just, obviously an under tier of Jane Goodall, but this book kind of breaks down her life. And I was always a big Tippi fan, just a good person in general, and out there helping people and sometimes being the victim herself. So it's a good book to read. And this is the signed copy, so again, a book that I'm very happy to have. Another book I won't stay too long on, but this is Eric Idle's book. Eric Idle, if you know him, this is also a signed copy. But Eric Idle was a gentleman he worked primarily with Monty Python. So he pretty much worked with Monty Python from 1969 to 1983. He was born in 1943. And to this day, he's still doing his thing. He's still an amazing actor. He does a lot of voice acting on top of physical acting, and he's a comedian for the most part. So his stuff is just unbelievably hilarious. This is a lot of photos in this book following his life. A lot of it kind of following his life through Monty Python and his relationship with his teammates and such. But this is a great read, and it's hilarious. So would suggest reading his Eric Idle. This is a really great documentary. And of course on Steve Martin's, he had to write Please Cut from Vinyl. Insufferable genius. He always had Eric Idle has a sense of humor that's very unique. Definitely one of my favorites. This is kind of unique. It's a children's book from 1993, written by Liz Rosenberg and illustrated by Stephen Gamel. And the reason I like this book, as you can tell, it's not a very big book. It's a very small children's book, but it's got amazing artwork. This artwork, if it looks familiar, is Gamel was the same artist who did Scary Stories, and if you're familiar with Scary Stories, it is pretty much a cult classic at this point. And I think not only are the stories creepy, but the artwork, I think, certainly is the main reason people collect those books. This one is signed by both Liz and Stephen. And if you ever get a chance to see any of Stephen's artwork, certainly I suggest grabbing a hold of it and reading it through. This book in general is called Monster Mama, and it's about obviously a child who has a monster mama. And it's just a fun little book. I don't know if I'd read this to any too young of kids, but it's certainly still a children's book and a fun little read. So Liz Rosenberg and Stephen Gimmel, very fun. R.L. Stine. R.L. Stine, this is one of his more recent books, and this is actually a graphic novel, which is pretty neat. So it's in kind of comic book form. It's a graphic novel, kind of a science fiction-y, supernatural type thing. And this is Just Beyond. And so this is a signed copy. It's also the Barnes & Noble special edition book. Now, one reason I really liked this book was not only because it's a graphic novel. I think graphic novels are just really cool. We all grew up with Goosebumps. And Goosebumps was certainly at the forefront of my childhood, and I loved reading those. This one is signed by R.L. Stine and Tim Jacobus, who is the artist also for all of the other Goosebumps books. And I actually had the opportunity to meet him not long ago, and he's an extremely friendly guy, and he just loves, he has a serious passion for his art and for his fans. So if you ever get a chance to see R.L. Stine or Tim at like a Comic-Con, I highly suggest meeting him. He's extremely friendly and loves to chat and talk about art. So very fun book, and again, with it being signed, I'm a pretty happy camper with that one. Basil Gogos. This gentleman is certainly one of my most favorite artists. I'm a big fan of Universal Monsters, and this guy's artwork is just incredible. As you can tell, he does a lot of amazing artwork, especially with Universal Monsters, and the colors are just impeccable. So this book is kind of just a standard art book. It's certainly not a rare book. So it kind of breaks down some of his more famous books, and as well as his biography for the most part. Kind of breaks down his life and where he started and where he ended. He was born in 1929 and actually died in 2017, very recent. One reason I wanted to bring this out was because I also have this bad boy, which is a sports card, Universal Monster sports card from This Island Earth, Metaluna Mutant, which is certainly one of my most favorite characters in Universal. And this one is signed by Basil. So I kind of cherish this. This is certainly one of my faves. But I highly suggest following him. He's got some amazing artwork, and his life story is pretty fun to read through. So continuing with artwork, this one is a very unique book. This is a book that when I was a child, I read over and over and over and over and over and over and over. And this is Expedition, and this follows Darwin 4 in 2358 AD, being an account in words and artwork. And it's by Wayne Barlow, and it's got an amazing dust cover. However, I just love the hardcover. This is first edition. Most of these are in soft cover. This is actually a hardcover book, so I'm happy to have the hardcover because it just feels better. This is truly an amazing book. This was published in 1990, and the artwork alone is worth the buy, but the story is amazing too. So imagine for a minute you're going to another planet, and we send a satellite to another planet, and we're documenting the creatures, documenting the animals, documenting what we see. And that's what this is it's us going to Darwin. And they actually did a documentary, a mockumentary, if you will, on, I think it was Discovery Channel, and actually followed this book. So if you're into the kind of documentary type shows, this is what it was. This is what it was written about, or this is what it was following. Was this book? So a very, very fun book. I highly suggest reading this. And there are multiple copies of this out there these days. You can find this around. So, Expedition. Yeah, very cool. And I have one more book left. And this book is kind of a unique one. It's actually one of my newer books I have. This is The Resurrectionist. This is the first book, I believe, of the late 1870s. And it's kind of a Grey's Anatomy of mythological beasts. So this is kind of about his lost works. Imagine for a minute a mad scientist doctor who wants to merge animals and humans. That's what this is about. Imagine somebody who's crazy enough to do it. That's for the most part what this is about. And you can see, I mean, three-headed dogs, mythical beasts, humans with animal parts. And if I'm not mistaken, if you follow this and actually watch some documentaries on this, there are a lot of really questionable things that this gentleman did. And eventually he started traveling, I think, in shows. And eventually he disappeared and nobody knows what happened to him. So don't hold me on that. I might want to fact check some of those, but this book in general is very, very, very interesting. And I would be curious to know why they haven't done a movie on this gentleman. To be honest, this would be a really great movie about this guy's life. But Dr. Spencer Black. So amazing book, amazing artwork, and certainly creepy and stuff that'll probably keep you up at night. I don't doubt for a minute. But if you're into creepiness, this is certainly a book for you. There you go. Hudspeth is an artist and author living in New Jersey. This is his first book. So very cool stuff. So there you go. Nightmare fuel. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this presentation of some of my favorite books on my favorite stuff. Until next time, have a great week. Bye-bye.